Okay. All right, welcome everybody. Give me a second to turn off this the YouTube and give me a moment to see here. Let's see. Get our Facebook together here. We promised we would go live on Facebook. Alrighty, well, let me see. While I am getting that together, let's start with some introductions. I will introduce myself. My name is Lakeisha Wolf, and I'm a co-founder and serve as executive director of Ujamaa Collective. We are a nonprofit cooperative located in the historic Hill District of Pittsburgh. And we have been practicing cooperative economics for a very long time. We started to organize the end of 2007 into 2008. And so we've been doing this for about 16 years now, and just really excited and proud of the ways that we've grown, the things we've learned in this journey. I realized that I was a Black cooperator before I actually even had the language for it. And so we'll probably talk a little bit about what that means tonight, because I think that there's a lot of us who are cooperators and just don't use that language. So we'll talk about that. But I'm excited for Ujamaa to launch this series called Collective Courage Conversations, and it is based off of the book by Dr. Jessica Gordon Nembhard. She wrote this book. It's actually almost 20 years old now. I think when this book was published originally, it's published with Penn State Press, and they are actually about to bring out a new version of this book. I think there may be just a few updates, probably a new foreword. And as we talk tonight, we'll talk about why this book is so important, and really what the research that Dr. Jessica did, how that research has actually really propelled the fourth wave of the cooperative movement, particularly for Black folks in the United States. So if you don't have this book, you can get this book. We actually have this book for sale at Ujamaa, right? We operate a cooperative retail store for Black artists and makers and creative entrepreneurs. Our members are based locally and nationally, and we have partnerships globally with Black creatives all over the place. But we did just order these books, and they are on sale at Ujamaa. So please get a copy if you don't have one. If you're connected to a group, an organization, right? There are a lot of people across the country who are using this book in book clubs, right? Having reading circles. And most co-ops actually start with study groups, right? Folks who are reading and studying and doing research and really understanding history together, so that we can deal with some of the current challenges we have, right? Culturally, socially, and economically. So get Collective Courage if you don't have it. And I'd like to go ahead and introduce our guests for this evening. First, I'm just going to introduce two folks who are on the Ujamaa team. One person you see here, gentleman Sadiq Roberts. Sadiq is serving as our marketing specialist. He has a local company called Pyramid Pittsburgh that does marketing and advertising support for small and mid-sized companies in nonprofits. And so he's been working with us for 4 years, just about. And so we appreciate him being here to offer some support for us tonight. And then we also have my sister from another Mr., Sister Sheba Gittins, who we've been working together for a long time, but she's actually a member of Ujamaa and a newest member of our staff, of our team. And she'll also be here offering some technical support. She'll be managing the Q&A and making sure that we offer some time for questions, and we might be sharing some visuals and some things from our guests. So tonight's conversation is, as our inaugural conversation, is really about Black-led and Black serving community grocery stores, right? We're talking about food co-ops. And we wanted to bring together in these Collective Courage series of conversations folks who are here in Pittsburgh, who are working locally on a number of different types of cooperatives, and really pair them in conversation with other folks across the country who have achieved some level of cooperative success, meaning that they took a project from start and have actualized it, right, and are presently cooperating in a business or some kind of enterprise. And so tonight I'm excited. I've been knowing some of these folks for a long time. And so I'm just excited. So I'm going to introduce my other sister from another Mr., Sister Saundra Cole-McKamey from Hazelwood. And Sister Saundra, if you can just unmute yourself and just give us a little brief bio. I think you all can do justice better around what you do and who you are, and kind of the portfolio of your work in community.
Well, I would say thank you for the invite, sis. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate sharing the journey as we move forward with this co-op work. So again, thank you and everyone that's on the line. I think, I believe wholeheartedly that, we really work out of a need in our community. A lot of times people just work and they're not sure what they work out of, but we work out of a need, and our community is not a food desert. It's set up like the system is set up the way it is. It's designed that way. So a lot of when the foundations come out, they ask, what is it that we need in our community? We tell them, what we need, but it seems as though it falls on deaf ears a lot of times. So we figure, we can't wait for nobody to come and save us. We got to save ourselves. You know what I mean? So we start putting our action plan forward, and Pastor Love can tell more in depth how, where we come from and how far we have came up to this point, and it's not an easy fight, especially when you're fighting for the people. It's not easy, and at first it's like you can't see the work that you're doing until you see the work that you're doing, and then you meet the people such as yourself, sis, you know what I mean? You meet people like you that's doing the same grind and for the same reason as for our people. You know what I mean? So this work right here is dear to my heart, because so many times the people are left out. They're coming in our community, they're built in brick and mortar. They're not considering the people in the community that's been in the community. They're looking at the people to come. That's the problem. So again, like I said, I'll pass that to Pastor Love and where we come from, and he'll give a brief snippet on where we come from.
Oh, okay. Praise the Lord, everyone. I'm Pastor Lutual Love Sr. I'm the pastor of Praise Temple Deliverance Church. I'm located in the greater Hazelwood community. Of course, my journey started many years ago in the communities called Westgate and Broadhead, which we changed the name to Ferrywood, where we established the first community cooperative in the region in public housing. It too was called Ujamaa, the Ujamaa Center, and it consisted of a community grocery, cooperative grocery store, laundromat, and credit union location. It lasted for 10 years before politics decided that they wanted to change the landscape of that community. Since then, I personally have been interested in creating cooperatives, food cooperatives, small ones, where a group of us got together and, bought cows and we pitched in for them in our food co-op, and we, distributed the food amongst the members of the co-op, and it grew. As I got into working with Saundra in the greater Hazelwood community, I found that she had the same thinking, same vision. So I began working with them, and what we've done, we created an organization called the Greater Hazelwood Coalition Against Racial and Ethnic Disparity, GH Cared, along with For Law. For Law is the mother of that organization. We concentrated on diversity, equity, and inclusion, addressing food apartheid and gentrification that was taking place and is still taking place in our community. Where we live at, there are no grocery stores in the community. There was a Rite Aid that recently closed. And then the small stores are owned by Arabs and people of different nationality that sell their products, 3 times the amount of what they should cost. So the people in the community decided that since no public or private developers, after years of discussion, decided that they would not put a grocery store in our community, the residents came together. Now, we are not developers, average people who live there. Our children live there. We have generations of family living in the community. And it's those people that came together and joined through Law and GH Care on the vision that we have. We started off by trying to change the policy in the city that prevented residents from taking ownership of public land, especially land that they have designated for development. Without going deep into that, we won that battle, and we were able to get market holding of the land that we're now proposing to put our community-owned grocery store. And the building is still called Sarah Dixon Innovation Center, named after a woman in our community who's a pioneer, and we consider her like the mother of the community. She passed away fighting for the same thing that we're now fighting for in the same location that we're putting our store as well. So we worked on in the vision of social justice. And out of activities of working around social justice, this economic development project came about as a need, as Saundra said, not because we wanted to concentrate on brick and mortar, but it was a necessity that we had to do it because there was no one else doing it. So where we are now is that we're working to educate our community about what a cooperative is, how it better can serve our community. We teamed up with some local folks as well that has that expertise. People from Keystone like Ron Gatis and Kevin Phillips, who have stepped in to help us do this in terms of teaching the residents. And now we formed a community advisory board, cooperative advisory board. We have a steering committee prepared to study even more and to start the actual co-op. We also visit places in different places. One particular place is one of the places I mentioned in today's meeting, which is Gym City in Ohio. We found that particular cooperative, you can almost pick up the whole community and the work that people did and just bring it and sit it right in our community. That's how much they mirror together. And we reached out to those folks and people like that all over and other people in the city. And we found that our need was not to do a feasibility study like they want us to do to determine if it's feasible for the project the store to be established on the land, but to right size our store based on our population so that we would not have to depend on anyone outside of our primary district in order to stabilize our cooperative. So
Reverend
that's what
Love,
we've done.
thank you. I'm going to ask you to hold some of those points right there because we're going to come back and jump into some of the details. I'm going to
Okay.
ask our other guests from Dayton, Ohio, to introduce themselves. Sister Cherrelle, you want to go first?
Sure, and thanks for having me, everyone. My name is Cherrelle Gardner, coming to you from Dayton, Ohio. I'm one of the co-executive directors at Co-op Dayton with my colleague, my friend, my partner in crime, Amaha Sellasie and Kiana Daniels. And Co-op Dayton really started as an initiative and in the footprints of creating this cooperative grocery store, Gym City Market, that's been an incredible inspiration for our organization and for co-ops around the country. But it was created also with a larger vision and understanding that no one cooperative can exist on an island while we're functioning within capitalism. And so we need to secure it by building an interconnected network of cooperatives that are shifting our economy and shifting the culture of our community into seeing ourselves as stewards of resources that we create, that we build, that we own, and that we will protect to make sure that they stay in our community and serve our community long term. So I can do a whole TED talk on what that means and look forward to digging into that more with y'all as we go through the evening.
Beautiful. Thank you. And Brother Amaha.
What up, though? What's the love, everybody? Name's Amaha Sellasie, out of Dayton and Gym City Market and Co-op Dayton. And yeah, I think I'm excited to be here just to kind of learn and to continue to grow, of like how we, build deeper self-determination in our communities. And by combining like Dr. Jessica, the inspiration for this call, right? We'll talk about how we combine, movements, with economic development or community transformation and economic developments, and so I think we're still trying to learn and grow deeper in the space. And so look forward to the dialogue.
Well, thank you everybody for being here tonight. And I'm always the kind of person who I like to just keep things really authentic, really close to the ground, right? So, I don't want this to be a conversation that's above anybody's head. I want us to just have real conversation about the work we're doing and the movement we're a part of, right? I just want to say, so here in Pittsburgh, like my own experience, I'm gonna just say here, like I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, right? My family is from Philadelphia. And so I'm a first generation Pittsburgh person, right? I didn't really have extended family around or whatever. And so I had to kind of over time, right, build the community that I didn't have, right, in terms of extended family and whatnot. And that's really, I think some of my first experiences in being cooperative was, building extended family via community, right, and then being able to be in spaces where we are able to identify certain needs that were happening, right? And we began to kind of work together to meet some of those needs, right? In real small scale kinds of ways, right? As a community organizer. But my first real sort of cooperative experience came when I decided to apply for a job at the East End Food Co-op, right? So those of us here in Pittsburgh know about the East End Food Co-op. It's been in existence, I think, for 40 something years, almost as long as I've been alive, or probably maybe even a little bit longer than that, right? But I didn't really know about co-ops. So when I went to work there, because, I had a small business. I create skin and hair care products, right? I'm all into natural and organic. And so I just wanted to be in an environment, right, where people were dealing with healthy ingredients and healthy food, right? So that was my motivation to work there, right? And then over time, right, because in order to work there, you had to become a member. And so, right, so I became a member. And started to kind of understand, but it wasn't until probably a couple years in that I had started to move around inside of the store. And so I was promoted to a manager. And when I was a manager in the East End Food Co-op, I then had the opportunity to attend some of the conferences, right? So it was like, oh, you can go to the Amaha, you can help me out. CCMA.
Yeah, CCMA. Yeah.
Right, which stands for what?
Don't ask me that.
Yeah, it's like cooperative.
It's like the premier.
Yeah, it's the premier
co-op
grocery
conference.
food.
Yeah, grocery conference across the country.
It's the premier grocery conference for co-ops across the country, right? And so I went in that space. It was, it was a little bit overwhelming. I would say that, I wouldn't say it was not welcoming, but I would say that I probably was one of 2 to 3 Black folks in the space, right? And there were hundreds of people there. And then after that, I think I went to a young cooperative leaders training program, right? So the East End Food Co-op sent me there, which was a smaller group of young people, right, who were doing cooperative work. And then after that is when I ended up going to the Eastern Conference on Workplace Democracy. And when I went to that co-op conference, that was like, it completely blew my mind, because in that space, that's actually where I met Dr. Jessica Gordon-Emhard. It's where I met Sister Ajua Ifateo, who's out of DC. She actually was one of our first board members for Ujamaa Collective. And she's the founder of one of the co-founders of the Ella Jo Baker intentional housing community. And she's one of the writers, I think co-founders and editors and writers for GEO, which is a long-standing cooperative blog and sort of newsletter, like a digital newsletter that collects stories and like educational materials about co-ops, the solidarity economy from all around the world. And so that's a great resource, and we can try to drop that in the chat or in the Q&A so that folks can get some of those resources. And Sheba can probably help us with that. But it was when I went to that workplace, the Eastern Conference on Workplace Democracy, that I saw other Black folks. I saw a lot of Latino folks, right? Folks of all different walks of life doing cooperation, right? And doing it across multiple industries, sectors. It was like when I recognized, it was like when my full light bulb actually went off, right? because it was like, okay, so being an organizer and being a real like community person in Pittsburgh, you know, and I know all of these things, you know, we had been doing Sankofa circles and really interrogating just some of the pressing issues that really impacted Black people here in Pittsburgh and really everywhere. And so I was just very much aware of, you know, the systems and all of the things, but it was like when the knowledge of co-ops and sort of this cooperative model met this understanding of the community need, it was like, wow, like we can apply this to almost anything. It was like, why are we not doing this in Pittsburgh, right? Like, why is this not a thing, right? Or at least a thing that I could see, right? A thing that I could see to like link in and sort of activate on. And so, you know, after that for several years, it was just something that I talked about. I talked, you know, in my circles of folks in community, we would have conversations, deep conversations about intentional housing, right? And at a certain point, myself and some other sisters, we gathered and began to, we created a food buying co-op together. So there were about, I think, 9 or 10 of us. And we actually worked with one of the churches in the Hill District that allowed us to use their space. So we ordered from a natural food distributor. It's one of the same distributors that I learned about when I worked at the East End Food Co-op. And so we were able to order from this spot, and we would get this bulk food, right? And we all would put in the same amount of money, a little bit over what the food cost, so that we could build up a little kitty, right? That we kept in the Hill District Federal Credit Union bank account that we had started for our group, right? And we began to do that work, right? And so a lot of times, and I'm bringing this up because, you know, a lot of times we think about cooperative development in terms of really big things, right? And big things like a Gem City Market, and big things like a co-op in, you know, a cooperative grocery for Hazelwood, right? Those are big things, but the big things start small, right? And I always like to, within Ujamaa, right, we use a lot of work from Adrienne Marie Brown, right? And so one of the sort of principal strategies she talks about, right, is that the small is the all, right? So only the things that we can do and maintain on a small level are going to be the things we can do and maintain on a larger level, right? When folks talk about fractals, right? That the small and things start to build into the all. So I'm going to ask Amaha and Cherrelle, and either of you can jump in or tag team, right? And thinking about the small to the all, right? The small to the bigger thing, right? And Cherrelle mentioned that Co-op Dayton started first, which I didn't know, right? I didn't know that Co-op Dayton kind of started before you guys really launched Gem City Market. So talk to us about that concept and maybe how that concept applies to the work you all have done in Dayton over the past 8-9 years to get to building the co-op.
Sure. You want me to go, Cherrelle? You want to?
Yeah, you can go. Sorry, I might have misspoke, but Gem City Market started first, and then Co-op Dayton came out of that. So I think that's our small to all. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It was kind of like we needed part of it was, you know, the practical reason of in Ohio you can't have like a nonprofit cooperative, and so like we needed a way, like, you know, fiscal sponsorship and all these things. So it was like Co-op Dayton kind of, it developed out of the need as we were building the Gem City Market, you know what I mean? But Gem City Market was the first thing, you know? And yeah, you know, I appreciate the notion of the small to the large. And I think, yeah, I mean, I for me, I think it's like, how do we, you know, focus in on, you know, not understanding that the small can't create the large. And so it's like what do we do small that we can fractal up, you know what I mean? So I think, yeah, I think the market is part of it, like how we start building up our infrastructure. And I think part of it was, in our community that had been, suffered extreme disinvestment, part of it was even just this notion that we could actually change our lived environment. Like the fact that our community could take more control of our environment and self-determine something instead of waiting for others was a huge shift. That because sometimes we don't realize the power that we have, what I
Right.
mean? And so like, how can we do small things, which, the market, it's the biggest project I've ever been a part of, but it's like small when it's compared to like redeveloping West Dayton, you know what I mean? And so it's like, but the relationships that we built on the smaller part, you know what I mean? Like a lot of the other co-ops were kind of sparked out of the energy that came from the Gym City Market. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah. And I think in that same line of thinking, like I came in as a volunteer, business development, economic development, like that. I have no experience or background in that, but it was these small moments and interactions that we get to have with each other that developed our capacity as leaders and moved us into other areas of the work. Things as simple as let's vote on what kind of grocery carts we're going to have, because we know in our community grocery carts disappear. People need them to take stuff to their homes. And so are we going to get the grocery carts with the poles, the ones who use the quarters? Like, what are we just going to keep buying grocery carts? What are we going to do here? And having that conversation as a community and voting what we're going to do about this really small thing help build the capacity of how are we going to make decisions together? Who are our leaders going to be? How are we going to make this store successful? And it's that energy that we carried into building other co-ops, and that practice that we got in the early days of GCM that launched other co-ops in our ecosystem and are starting to build this whole network of cooperatives and a larger vision of how far can we take this to build our own economy that reflects what we actually need.
Yeah, if I could add something that
Yeah.
you made us think about, is that like, to me, part of knowing that the small creates the large, it's like, what can we practice on the small scale to give like a glimpse of hope of something that is like outside of the status quo, that we can then that like builds hope, you know what I mean? Because the more that we see something is possible and they're like, oh, we actually do have the power to shape the patterns in our environment, then that like inspires more action, because now I believe that, oh, as a community, we actually do have the power to do it. And then that enables more things to happen, you know what I mean? And so like, for me, it's like what we can do on a small scale is critical for like even global development, you know what I mean? Like the showing that, hiding the contradiction between the status quo and like what we can be together. And I think for the market, one of our key things was this participation. Like Cherrelle said, you know what I mean? Like we made so many decisions together, which was a slow process, but it was like we had to get into that mode of like, we actually can be the protagonists or like the authors of our story, and we can co-create together and not just be recipients of what downtown wants us to do or anybody else wants us to do. So that's like a process to build that muscle.
Right. So I want to before we jump over and talk about what's happening in Hazelwood. So based upon what you all shared, I'm wondering like what, how did you build that muscle, right? Like, because I feel like, I know prominent people, prominent as in folks who here in Pittsburgh who are visible, right, in like economic development and in different spaces, who have said to me over the years, right, oh, I've never seen a successful example of a cooperative economic development project, right? And so I wonder, right, as we're talking about the small to the big, right, and really developing the muscle for like collective decision making, right? What was the process, or if there's something in particular you can name that like helped people to get the practice, right? Like what was the thing that helped people to believe it was possible, right? Did you look at other examples? Did you do a study group, right? Like what helped people to say, oh, this is something I can do, right? Like that we're not waiting for the big wigs downtown or somebody else to make the decision about operating a grocery store in the community, right? Because to my knowledge, Gem City has over 4,000 members, right? At this point. So I'm just like,
Yeah, it's like 5,000, but yeah.
those first 100, 200 members, right? Like, cause that was the sort of starting point, right? So
Yeah.
to go from 100 people who believe to almost 5,000 people who believe, right? It's like, what was the thing that helped people believe it was possible?
Mm. Yeah, you know, I'd be curious to hear Cherrelle's answer too. But I think the first thing that we did was we shifted the language. So, you know, it was food desert, and then we changed it to food apartheid because
Right.
we wanted to acknowledge that it was man-made or a product of someone's imagination, that it wasn't natural, the state that we were in. So then that we could show that, like, you know, if this was someone's imagination, then we have the power to reimagine it. So that was this whole notion of like starting to like shift, you know what I mean? What Alice Walker said, like the greatest way to keep people out of power is to know that they have power, right? And so
Mhm.
it was like to shift in the mental idea. And then I think it was like a slow process of like gradual decisions, you know, like the naming of the market was a community decision. Like you know, that the community, we create a process for the community to like pick the name of the market, you know. Our mission statements, you know, we made the mission statement together. Uh Architectural design, you know, like all along the way, it was like people had agency to help make decisions together, you know, and I think that you know, it kind of grew over time, you know, and I think one of the things that we battled was at first was, yeah, right, who y'all to build a grocery store? You know what I mean? Because it ain't like this is like our third or fourth store, you know what I mean? It was like, shit, we know what we were doing either, you know what I mean? And so it was like we had to reach out to people in the national realm. But I think to answer one of your questions, I think one of our biggest keys, and so like when we started, we had no, I mean, we looked at Majagon and we looked at Co-op Cincy, but like we had no real like blueprint of like how to do it until later. So we like a lot of co-ops, they'll start selling memberships like real early on, and we did not. Like we waited until we had a solid business plan, at least we thought we had a business plan, all these things before we actually asked for shares. So we sold shares like after 2 years of organizing. So it was like a solid thing where some people, you know, they'll start on Monday and then by like Thursday they're selling shares. And then like you'll get a lot in the beginning, but then it dwindles out because it's like a process. And you know, so we waited until we had more answers. And then, you know, I think we had like 500, 600 members the first year, something like that.
Wow. Thank you. So Sister Saundra. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I
So
think Cherrelle's
after
gonna say something, but
you
okay.
all share, yeah, it looks like there's going to be some questions already in the chat. But Sister Saundra and I'm gonna have you go, and then Reverend Love can add on. So tell us about the I know you spoke about it a little bit earlier, but really the ongoing motivation of taking this on, right? Because I know that you've been doing a lot of other work in Hazelwood for a really long time, right? But then at a certain point, you're still doing that work through poor law, but there's been this shift to really focus on getting the grocery store operational and getting it up and getting people to believe in it, right? To believe it's possible, right? And as Brother Amaha mentioned, right? Like how is it going in building the muscle for this work in Hazelwood?
Well, I would say, Sister Keisha, it's like when, like you said, you know, I have been doing a lot of work out here in the community already. So it's like building trust when it comes to the people. You know what I mean? Once you build that relationship with the people and they know that you do have their best interests as well as the community's best interests at heart, it's easy to build that muscle because they know that what you're fighting for is for a real cause. So we just, you know, we continue to have these meetings, you know, to bring the people out, to educate them, to keep them informed on how we're moving. And of course, you know, it's slow, but people believe that we deserve our own, and they understand that when we do, you know, bring this grocery store to our community, that it's us. You know, it's us. It's us. This is our community store. A developer can't come in and take it from us. That's what I say. Pastor Love, you might want to add on to that.
Oh, you know what? I had to mute him earlier.
Yeah,
And-
he had noise in the, he
yeah,
probably,
because he did have some noise in the background, and he may have some issues getting off of the mute.
yeah.
Yeah. Reverend Love, I apologize for that. So I'm gonna just jump over here to these questions so we can just have some more conversation. So we have two questions, one from Brother Mavery. Brother Mavery is actually our partner in our regional,
What up, babe?
right, in our regional ecosystem between Pittsburgh, Dayton, and Charleston, West Virginia. And so Brother Mavery's question is, how do you cultivate relationships that are conducive to stronger collaboration among people? And this question is open for anybody to answer. How do you cultivate relationships that are conducive to stronger collaboration amongst people? And I think Saundra's actually alluded to it a little bit, right? Around building trust, right? Because people have to know that they can depend on you. And actually the second question, which I'll come back to, but it's from Sister Camille Bailey. And Camille is the owner of Co-opreneur, which is a Black business directory, sort of Black business service center of sorts. And then she's also the co-founder of Emerald City, which is a Black co-working space. And just recently herself and her partners were able to literally like buy the block in Pittsburgh, in downtown Pittsburgh, and bought the building that they've been operating Emerald City out of. And it's just a few years ago, right, which actually got us to this point in having this webinar. We actually launched a research project, right? So Ujamaa, we've been doing this work for almost 16 years. And in the last couple of years, as we've been branching out in our relationships, right, learning more, we got to a space where we said, okay, like we know that we're in a niche, right, working in arts and culture, but we know that this concept, this practice of cooperation can be applied in all different sectors, right? And we're clear about what the need is in Pittsburgh. We're clear about all of the various reports over the years about Black people specifically, about Black women in particular, and in our children, right? And really the harsh conditions, right, that folks are dealing with, that they've been living with for generations. And so we launched what we call the African-Centered Cooperative Research Project, and Camille, through Co-opreneur, was one of our partners in that work. We also partnered with Dr. Asada Richards, who is a comrade of ours out of Houston, Texas, and she is a participatory researcher a community participatory researcher. She's a sociologist by trade and a cooperator by heart. And so we worked together. And one of the things that we did is we talked to a lot of folks here in Pittsburgh via a lot of surveys, some group conversations, right? And we're trying to answer this question around, what do individual people, in particular Black people, need here in Pittsburgh in order to commit to co-ownership models, right? Like, what do we need in order to even cooperate in real ways, right? Is it education? Is it training? Is it trust, right? And overwhelmingly, right, a lot of people talked about trust, right? And so, folks talked about the ways in which there are levels of collaboration happening in Pittsburgh, but a lot of the issues around the ways in which the system works, right? And that sometimes when you are in generations of poverty, right, there's a certain mindset that you get sort of inundated with, that you internalize, and oftentimes it's the systems themselves, right, and sometimes even folks that you might consider to be like institutional partners, right, will kind of keep you stuck inside of those systemic ways of being, even if you're trying to do something different, right? So they'll say, oh, we'll give you the money if you do this, but do it in this way, right? And not really work yourself out of the system, right? And so it brings me to the question that Camille has asked, right? And she said, do you all think there are ways to trick, and trick is in quotations, to trick status quo funders and institutions to support cooperatives while not forcing status quo definitions of success, right? Or should it stay completely by the people, right? So do we take the money from traditional funders, from maybe traditional banks, even though we may define our success maybe more broadly, right? Because even so, co-ops, right, are businesses, generally speaking, right? And there's different ways in which people cooperate, right? So we, inside of our research project, and now even nationally in conversation, right, we name the fact that when we talk about cooperation, we're not just simply by itself talking about economic cooperation, right? We're talking about cultural, social, and economic cooperation. And through our research, and actually through our lived experiences, and I think in the national conversation that a lot of Black cooperators are having specifically, we talk about, for our communities and the history of Black communities in this country, is very difficult to even participate in true and real economic cooperation without having some levels of cultural and social cooperation first, right? So when Amaha, you talked about being able to shift the language, right? In helping people to even understand the conditions of where we're at, right? That to me is a part of the cultural cooperation, right? People have to have some levels of alignment around the values and the principles, right? That we are aligning ourselves, not that we all have to be the same, but that there's some core things, right, that we're going to have to understand together, right? And see and envision and hold together in order then to embody those principles and values to work those things out socially in our relationships, right? Because that's then where we get to the trust building, the how can I depend on you? How can I trust that when we get into the room, you're going to listen to me, right? So that we can have group decision making, right? Because if we don't have social cooperation to make a decision together, how are we going to build something, put money into it together, and then share in the economic, right, and sort of tangible benefits of that thing, right? So to just come back to the question, Camille is asking, right? Are there ways that we should be tricking funders, right? Or convincing funders to fund this kind of work, right? To support co-ops, right? While not forcing us, the folks who are practicing the cooperation, taking money from maybe folks who are not value aligned, perhaps. And how do we take that money and support the work we're doing when maybe the outcomes we're looking at are not solely about profits? I think that's the question.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know why you said there was people in the background. There's nobody here but me in this car. But anyway, I want to get back to Hazelwood. What we did and what we continue to do is go to the people. Funding was not ever an issue with us because they wouldn't give us no money. They don't, in Pittsburgh, as you already know, food justice is not an issue. We're making it issues to the Food Justice Fund Committee and people like that we're working with food justice. But what we did, we took the issue of food apartheid and we took it to the people who were suffering, the people who are really supposed to be our tenant beneficiaries that some of us forget who we're working for. And we began to feed people. We fed over 7,000 families a month for a whole year.
Mm-hmm.
And the way we did that, we did it through fundraising. You know, we didn't get funds like a lot of groups get initially. The funders started coming to us because we had after school programs where we fed children. We had senior citizen programming to the intergenerational program where we fed people. And then we went door to door feeding people. We are truly addressing food apartheid in a real sense. Food access means a lot. It deals with transportation, it deals with education, but most of all, it deals with putting food in people's bellies. A lot of people like to build ecosystems and talk, like you said earlier, above other people's heads and what they're doing. But a lot of us also forget what food apartheid means. Like the brother said earlier, you know, about using the word food desert and using food apartheid. People are scared of the word food apartheid because they know it means Black, brown, Hispanic, and women. They don't want to say food apartheid. They want to use food desert, what we know, like he said, is something that's created by man, not by God. So when you ask that question, how do we, I don't know, when you use the word trick funders into funding these movements that we have, I think it's more or less make them want to be part of the movement. For law, GHQ could turn out 500 people in one day. How many community groups can you say could do that? How many communities that you could look? Why? Because the people trust us. Because they know that they could count on us for food. They can count on us for clothing. So the basic needs of people must be met. You just can't get funds and pay yourself 3 digits and sit back and walk past people as if they are invisible. The same people that you're supposed to be serving. And a lot of us, I don't care if you're Black or white, a lot of us, they bypass the people they're supposed to serve. And if you don't connect with the people, and if you don't see the real change in a smiling face on a child that had an early breakfast when he wasn't supposed to get one from his family, or a lunch or a dinner after school, then you're not feeling it. You know, it's not a God. It's not driven by God, which a lot of us have left out of this whole picture. You know, not realizing that one of the major issues that God put out in the scripture is feed my people. And so food is connected to every aspect of our life and our children's life. The way they think, the way they act, uh, every way food is connected. And when you know that and you feel that in your heart and you're dedicated to it, then funding from outside sources will come. But the first thing, you understand what a co-op is. A co-op is people coming together. Like, that's what Ujamaa is, cooperative economics. That's what the word means. Along with Ujamaa, we know there's Ujamaa, collective work and responsibility. So when you put that collective work responsibility along with Ujamaa, amongst the people, the funding will come between the people. We fund our own movement. We in our out of our pockets, out of the family's pockets that was eating. We took food stamps and put people together to put their food stamps together and bought a cow and split the cow. We started our co-op, and that's the level that we started on. We know we had to go on a larger level, but earlier someone say start small.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we started small. And that's how small we started. We started going to a slaughterhouse, buying a cow, 5 people in a co-op. That was our form. That was our first co-op. It wasn't these big costs we talk about, or grocery stores. We formed food co-ops to feed people, let people know that food apartheid means to feed our people. And if you, no matter what organization you name yourself or participate in, if you forget that aspect of it, then you're going to get into building brick and mortars and forgetting the people you're supposed to serve. So I believe that that's how funders come. I think you can get funders come. We can get funders come if we show the results of better health, mental health, and food, that we're feeding our people healthy foods, and the change in our system, our food system in our community.
Ashe, Reverend Love, you actually dropped a lot of gems right there. Because I think you just kind of nailed it in the sense that, right, cooperation is relational, right? It's about our relationships. And if we're not serving each other, right, which is serving ourselves, then we're not actually doing it. Yeah. And so, because, we didn't get into all of the definitions of what a co-op is, and maybe Sister Sheba, this is actually a great time if you can share the screen and we can pull up. I think we have we may have a slide, I think, of Dr. Jessica, perhaps, in there somewhere in our folder, where she gives a definition of co-ops and cooperation. But essentially, right, it's a group of people who come together to meet their own mutual needs, right? That's like the very basic definition of what a co-op is, right? And folks bring their own resources to the table, all of that. Is it in there? If it's not, that's fine. You can click on the one that's the co-op principles with the circle in the middle. Right there, the third one. Right, so co-ops are governed by principles, right? So it's really a principle-centered business. It's a value-driven business, right? So the goal of co-ops are to meet the needs of its members first, right? So, and it's interesting because when I worked at the East End Food Co-op, and I know Brother Amaha has mentioned this, and other folks, right? Grocery stores in general don't have high profit margins, just, general grocery stores. Now, there might be certain grocery stores that are huge corporations. But when it comes to co-ops, right, the goal of a food co-op is not necessarily to make profit, right? There isn't one owner, right? So a traditional business is going to have one or a small group of owners, right? And they're generally putting out a goods or services in order to make a profit, not necessarily to meet their own needs, right? So when folks set up a food co-op, they're setting it up because they want to provide access to food, and intentionally, usually it's healthy food, right? But want food for themselves, right? And so in doing that, whether it's a food co-op or any co-op, you're governed by these principles, right? And one of the principles is member economic participation, right? So there's going to be some kind of member share, right? And I know generally it looks like commonly the shares that I've seen in grocery co-ops are generally $100. I think that's pretty common, but it might vary. I think that's the Gem City Market is $100. Is that correct? It's 100. I know the East End Food Co-op, yep, charges $100, and it's a one-time payment. So that is the sort of equity share that every single person has to put into the business in order to participate. Sheba, can you share the slide from Gem City Market that talks about their membership? Yep, right there. Amaha, can you talk to us a little bit about this membership piece at Gem City?
Sure. I kind of wanted to touch on some of the questions too, but
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, sure.
So yeah, I can I think so our membership structure, and I think that's something that we're actually in the process of reevaluating. So we have a $100 one-time membership. We're wondering because some of the people, they have memberships, but they don't shop, and so we're trying to figure out like how do we, if you're not really shopping there, like how can you like support like with a maybe yearly donation or something like that. So we're figuring that out. But yeah, it was $100 for a lifetime membership. If you got if you're on any kind of governmental assistance, it was a $10 membership. And then, at one point we had worked out with some of the local hospital networks, and they gave like a 50-50 match. So like if someone within a trade area bought a membership, they would match it. So it'd only be $50 for them to get a membership. You know what I mean? So yeah, there's different structures. And I think we're still figuring out like how to get more benefits for the membership, like inside the store, because at first we didn't have the ability to offer like deals and like discounts. You know what I mean? So like we're developing that now, so that like kind of be more like a Kroger's Plus card or something like that. You know, one thing that I wanted to, I don't know, I want to go back too far, but I think it's learning how to, for Mabry's question, I think it's like part of like how we learn how to walk with people instead of doing things for people, and which is like a slower process, but like how to really like the one such Saundra said, like building the trust, and I think we got to build something that's contagious, like they said, like make revolution irresistible, you know what I mean? So it's like what are we building that like people want to be a part of because of like the energy and like the vibe that comes with it, and I do think education is a part of it, because I think we have to, like, there's things that we have to unlearn as far as like how community transformation works, and like who we are, you know what I mean? Like that's why I appreciate in ABC like Ubuntu. Like that is not just a great idea, you know what I mean? But it's like understanding how, like, we are connected together and we have a shared future. And so like how are we gonna, build that shared future together? I think it's key, solidarity, shared identity, you know what I mean? So it's like, so I think all those are kind of pieces. And for the question about the funding, I don't know about the trick part or anything like that, but one thing that we found is that like in areas that are redlined, previously redlined, there's health data that will back up the need for the store, kind of like Reverend mentioned, how it impacts kids' health and kids' ability to focus in school, so like I think one way to get funding is to like name with the lack of food access, like the health issues that is coming from that, you know what I mean?
Mhm. So I do want to give a shout out to folks on Facebook who are watching right now and sharing information and whatnot. So Dawn, who is on Facebook Live asked, how do we cultivate the political power of cooperatives such that we can transform our regional policy? What is the role of cultural organizing towards this end, right? And I feel like that's connected to another question. I just want to name this from DeJuan Mason, who's here on Zoom, where he said, I love the idea of co-ops in creating community wealth, but I'm concerned that we're addressing the symptoms of food apartheid and not the causes. Is there a way to address the policies at both federal and local municipal levels that can be sustained so that our future generations don't have to have these conversations? So so we got kind of a twofold, right? Because you know, co-ops are in my opinion, right, a solution to some things, but it's also, I think, beyond, you know, just a solution to the symptoms of the system, right? These symptoms that the system has created. It actually is like an original way of being, right? So I want to name that, right? So when we talk about cultural shifting, right? It's not like, oh, we're just doing this because we can't do it what we would consider to be the traditional way, that one person is going to create enough wealth or have access to enough individual capital in order to start a grocery store and feed the community that they may or may not live in, right? But I think that co-ops are a way of existing in community, right? Where we're recognizing that, you know, and Cherrelle mentioned this earlier, and you can jump back in if you want to, right? When we talk about, because what we're talking about are symptoms of capitalism, right? And so they are symptoms and conditions of capitalism. And so, you know, there's not going to be a lot of institutions that benefit from capitalism willing to say, oh, you know, we're just going to stop practicing capitalism, right? And so, yeah, so maybe that's a conversation that we can kind of jump in together here, right? Because I think, yes, there's some policies and some things that definitely need to shift and change for sure. And I know that there are folks in the cooperative movement across the country who are working on that. And I think that we need some more of that here in Pittsburgh. There's because actually, Saundra, if you want to name one of the council folks is actually a part of your committee, correct?
Yes. Barb Warwick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's very, very much interested and believe in the fight as well, far as we need a grocery store. So she's been helping in any, you know, way that she can. But she definitely believes that we deserve our groceries.
You know, one thing I believe is that in Pittsburgh, we have to, those who are in leadership position that's doing this kind of work need to get rid of the turf issue themselves. I find out, you said you like to get real about things. When I find out in working in Pittsburgh that we're not together as Black people. And, you know, like I come up under El Hamalik Shabazz, Malcolm X, and he taught us alliances and coalitions. And alliances are permanent, coalitions are temporary. We have not moved to the point yet because we lost generation of cultural understanding of who we are, Pittsburgh. And the younger generation, or the younger people especially, I believe that if we're doing a store in Hazelwood and there's a store, a cooperative going on in Homewood, the best thing that can happen if they join together so that the competition will be eliminated. So we're not competing against each other for those same dollars when you talk about the funders. But we need to join together and say, okay, we're going to make one proposal to fit the blueprint for all of us. I'm just using that as an example.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that's one way to get funders' attention. I believe that's one way to get create a stronger movement. But as long as they create a system and support a system of competition between ourselves when we're the only ones that are doing it. That's the first thing. We're the only ones that's doing it. They're not doing it. In the city of Pittsburgh, food justice is just not an issue yet. It's not, they don't have a food justice funding in the city council or the mayor's office yet. They just funded $3 million to the food justice fund activities, but it's not part of the city structure. If we came together, those of us who are working in Pittsburgh and trying to create cooperative, if we learn to join together and put and project the image of unity, in the way that we operate, that is the strongest way, I believe, of breaking the cycle here in Pittsburgh.
And to just add to that real quick, I feel as though, we shouldn't have to trick them into giving us that money that we deserve. Because guess what? We're really doing the work. Like, we're doing the work on a real level. And I feel like, a lot of times, all they do is come in our community and put there what they think we should have. You know what I mean? They never come asking, how could we help? You know what I mean? They already got their agenda when they come into our community. So, you know what I mean? My thing is, no, y'all should give us this money. You know what I mean? Because I do. I look at it like it's already ours. Y'all done washed it. I don't know how many, that dirty money so many times, but it's already ours. So that's where I'm at with it. Like, I don't feel like we should have to hide anything. This is what we need. And y'all talking about y'all want us to change. You want things to change. Well, y'all have the power to do it, and so do we. You know what I mean? And like Chester Love said, if we move unified, they ain't gonna have no other choice because it's gonna make them look bad that they didn't. So we just gotta move unified.
Right, which actually speaks to the ecosystem piece. Cherrelle, can you just speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, and I do think this connects to some of the other questions around, like, how do we build up membership? How do we get funder buy-in? I think cooperatives are a piece of a larger strategy of just how do we make this work for ourselves? How do we change our economy so it actually works for us? And I have found co-ops are actually, the cooperative form is actually really easy to digest for community members and for funders, because it's a business that will make its own money, pay for its own expenses, and meet community needs. It checks all the boxes of what folks are looking for. And what it really is about is building a large enough tent that everybody can come under it. We don't disagree that food is an issue. We don't disagree that our community deserves better. And so if that's the case, here are some actions that we can all take to make this thing possible. And I think that's what built the base of Gem City Market. I think that's what built the funder pool, that underlying belief that we deserve better. And if we just all do a little bit, then none of us have to do a lot. And around the piece of policy and federal, local, municipal levels and everything like that, I think that's the part that scares them. And that's the part that they don't need to know about just yet. It's like, they need to see the tip of the iceberg of, we're going to build a cooperative business that will provide food or childcare or meet whatever the community need is. And we agree about that. But there's an underlying current that's built through the education that Amaha mentioned that gets us deeper in addressing some of the underlying issues. The co-op just brings us all under one tent around what we agree on and gives us that process to start having those conversations of what are the underlying causes that we need to be addressing while we try to make existing in this system just a little bit easier while we build what we're moving towards.
That was beautifully said, Cherrelle. Thank you. Oh, it looks like we lost Sister Saundra there. Oh, she back. Okay. So let's and then we talked a little bit about the food apartheid, right? And we talked about the man-made piece around that, right? What are some of the, if any, right? What are some of the current or historical factors that that you feel are like influencing the state of the community, right? So now that Gem City Market has been built, you have Co-op Dayton going on, right? And I feel like, you know, in Pittsburgh, there's a number of initiatives, right? So there's the piece that Saundra and Reverend Love are working on in Hazelwood, right? Which is actually similar to Gem City in that you know, they want the grocery store, but the grocery store in Hazelwood, right? The vision, for what I understand, is that it's inside of what they call the Sarah Dixon Innovation Center. Sarah Dixon was somebody who was a community organizer in Hazelwood for a very long time, and so that center is named after that sister. And so that center will house the market. But then they also are thinking about what are the other pieces, right, to kind of round out that, so that it's a more of a, I guess, a full service center for the community, right? And so I know that on the rooftop, they want to do some agriculture, right, and actually grow some of the food that would be sold in the market. I know that they're thinking about, right, what does it look like to have a credit union, perhaps, right, also connected inside of that space, right? The East End Food Co-op also has a credit union connected to the membership of their grocery store, right? So there's models for that. But what are the other sort of factors that kind of influence, like whether they're challenges or whether they are stated needs that communities have in Dayton and here in Pittsburgh and Hazelwood specifically, right, that are influencing how you all are moving on the ground in community?
The first thing we had to do, well, the last thing that we had to do for real, after we went through a whole year of planning, we had to right size our grocery store. They had us, the URA had us competing against traditional grocery stores, making us think that we had to put a cooperative together that would be set up traditionally, you know, Giant Eagles and all these and all them. And after we studied and researched and worked in the community, we found out that that was the wrong approach. What we had to do is what we just did. We had to right size our cooperative so that we would know the day one it opens, it will be stabilized. Stabilized by the support of the population, the current population of our community, without any outside help. So we went from a 20,000 square foot store to a 15 down to a 10 because after we did a market study, we found out that our community, without any outside help, could support a 10,000 square foot grocery store. And like you said, the other things that will be in there, the wellness center, the credit union, you know, the farm on top of the roof, all that is part of the same system. And then we found out is that the community was splintered. Uh, most of the community groups in Hazelwood, they worked out of their homes. So we formed another co-op. We formed a real estate cooperative down the street. We bought the former Good Shepherd Church, and we created what we call the Equity One-Stop Shop Resource Center. Now, people laugh because they didn't know, or the funders didn't know, how both of them tied in together. And at the Equity One-Stop Resource Center, we formed a way for all the community groups that didn't have a place, didn't have a home, didn't have an office to work out. They now will have one in the Equity One-Stop Resource Center. So all the resources in our center that people in our community will be located, virtually located, coming out of one location that's tied into our food co-op. We formed what we call, we have a planning to put in a pantry, a high-tech food pantry, creating a food pantry based on a restaurant setting where we will provide food where people can come and eat. Children will be able to eat on the way to school. You know, it's all tied in. So now the community groups know that we all have something in common, and we have a way, whether it's mental health, we got groups coming in the one-stop center to provide mental health, different problems with health, and different every aspect that they can have, and what's not there. What we call shared office space. So if someone did want to come in, like neighborhood legal service, like the WIT program or whatever, we're bringing the services to the people. We didn't have a store. A new mother, or I should say, a new family with young children could not even get WIC. So we brought the Giant Eagle food market to our community. And the first thing that we did was work with them to in their WIC program. We worked with them for 3.5 years because they didn't have WIC on their mobile unit before. Now we have them in the store, and they're telling us through data that our mobile unit is one of the highest used units in the city. So that data helped us, which was mentioned early on. So people are coming together. We're bringing people together based upon economic development, workforce development, but all out of a social justice need or social justice attitude. And so we try to make it all work together. So everything that we do got to match up to the current needs of the people in the community. And now we have people coming to us and working with us, not just coming with a hand out, but coming to volunteer, that wasn't volunteering before, helping to serve people, helping to help people to get the clothing that we get. So all of those things connect into one. And now they know, I'm telling you this is not exaggeration, they know that grocery store that's coming is coming. They know that it's theirs. And now they want to learn how to own it. They want to know how to make sure it stay there. And and they're attending workshops. We had on the 10th of, I think it was June or July, we had our first community meeting, and we brought over 145 people interested, in the co-op, and then the follow up was a member of 25 people that joined the steering committee, and another 55 people who joined the community advisory board. The people are opening their eyes and ears, saying, "Well, we can do this," because they see it happening, and they able to work better too, because they also receiving some of the benefits. Not some of it, everything that comes out of it. They see where their children are benefiting, where they are benefiting, and I believe that once people see that in the community, that's where your power comes from. That's where that's where my God satisfaction come from as well, because people are talking different in our community than they did just 5 years ago. So I just think I go back to it. I just believe going back to the people, and making the people first understand. I love what happened in Ohio with June City. I went there and I was shocked, because I said, this is everything we're talking about here. And I know it could happen because, personally I was involved in doing it once before. But this move, like you said, this has got to be a movement. What we're doing here, this conversation that we're having here, it has to be a movement. And that movement somehow, I don't know how, I'm willing to work and help make it that way, but we have to connect with one another. So I don't care if you're in Ohio or you're in East Liberty. I don't care where you live at. Somehow what we're doing in Hazelwood should be connected, and what you're doing should be connected. And I believe that's what you're doing in having this session and and what Ujamaa is attempting to do throughout this city right now. And I believe that, and I believe it's going to work, you know, but we have to connect each other with each other spiritually, first of all. You know, we have to be a spiritual revolution in the minds. You know, we have to change the way we're thinking here. You know, the way they want us to think, the way, you know, God has us to think. And then it has to be connected physically and it has to be connected economically. We don't trust one another. Not just the people in the community got to trust you. We have to trust one another.
Mhm.
We Hazelwood had to trust Homewood getting $1 million worth of funding, and you take the fund, you take the $1 million, and that group to get that money. You understand? That kind of movement, that kind of change had to happen internally amongst us. You know, and that's where we're missing. I think we're competing against one another for the same dollars. We're competing against one another for the same issues, and we have the same problems instead of uniting to solve each other's problems together.
Ashe. Yeah, you are elder dropping jewels on us tonight, Reverend Love. We appreciate you. Cherrelle and Amaha, you all want to talk just a little bit. I know we just have a few moments left. Because what Reverend Love is speaking about really is the ecosystem building, right? And the greater relationship building. And you mentioned that at the beginning, right? That no co-op can exist on an island, right? Like there has to be a wealth of support around around cooperation, around the alignment and sharing and practicing of sets of values, right? That are really focused on meeting the mutual needs of the community. Can you tell me, can you just talk to us a little bit about the ecosystem part and maybe some of the other projects and work that Co-op Dayton is working on right now?
Sure, I can start and then Maha jump in. But Gem City Market was the inspiration for a lot of different groups, a lot of them working within the food system. So that spurred out several farm co-ops or food manufacturing businesses who want to be vendors at the market. But it also created space for the folks who were organizing to create Gem City Market, to see one another and find their shared values and skills and create co-ops off of that. So we also have a makerspace co-op of artists and makers who are sharing access to tool and teaching each other so that they can develop their skills and scale their businesses. And then I think we have a lot of informal groups that came out of that who maybe the form of a cooperative business wasn't right for them, but who are deeply committed to working with one another, like The Heart, which is a house of artists and healers who live together, but also I think a larger community of folks who come together on a regular basis and are committed to healing practices and learning together with one another. And I think that sets the foundation for a group of folks who are in the practice of not just having trust with one another, but having conflict with one another and working through it and not giving up on community, who can then be moved to different initiatives or projects of larger work. And with the recognition that how we're moving and interacting with each other isn't because we hate each other, isn't because we have issues with one another, it's because our needs are not met in this system. And we have to hold enough trust and space for each other and grace for each other that we can continue building out of it, even if it's not always side by side.
Ashe. And I feel like that what you just said really is such an important lesson for us in Pittsburgh, right? Because, you know, through the geographic landscape, right, people don't want to cross bridges here. You know, Reverend Love spoke about, right, like Pittsburgh has 90 neighborhoods, like Pittsburgh Central has 90 neighborhoods. right? And we're not even getting into sort of greater Pittsburgh, right? All of the neighborhoods in areas outside of what is considered the city, right? But greater Pittsburgh is even larger. And but there's a lot of, you know, historical harms, and but that is one thing, right? That has been a lesson we've gleaned over the last couple of years, and doing sort of this national networking work, right? Is how we all met each other, right? When we think about conflicts, right? Because a lot of folks in Pittsburgh don't want to come into the room together, right? Let alone do some of these other things, right? But for us to do that cultural shifting and really reframe how we even think about what conflict is, right? What are those tensions? And just like you mentioned, we have tensions and conflicts because it simply means somebody's needs are not being met, right? And how can we dig deeper and really inquire and have enough, as you said, trust and grace that we can hold enough space to work through what is the need that's not being met, because most likely it's another need, right? It's or it's the same or similar need other people have, right? That also are not being met, right? And sometimes the system just confuses you, right? Like I always say, there's this old book by the scholar named Dr. Neely Fuller, and he writes about white supremacy racism. And he says that if you don't understand white supremacy, everything else will just confuse you, right? And specifically in thinking about Black people and the ways in which we've internalized white supremacy racism, particularly here in Pittsburgh, right? It's that internalized idea that there's something wrong with us, or that we're not good enough, or if only we're in acts, like if we're in proximity to whiteness, right? That's where our power comes from, right? But to be able to shift and really understand that we have the power, right? It's not power that anybody has to grant or give to us. It's really about us coming together and seeing each other for who we are and seeing our gifts, right? I know that when me and Amaha oftentimes are in conversation, we always speak about the fact that, you know, it just takes a few people, right, who have enough courage to step into the circle first, and who are willing to bear their gifts, right, which then hopefully helps to give permission to other people to find the courage, right, to take that risk and step into the circle and bear their gifts for the all as well, right? And that, you know, when we're able to do that, right, that's when we actually actualize the power we have, right? Because then we can say, oh yeah, me too, you too, we too, right? And so I just want to, I know as we're running out of time here, I want to, one is just acknowledge the fact that our Hazelwood organizers, Sister Saundra and Reverend Love, right, and their team out of Hazelwood did come several months ago and visit Gem City Market. They sat with you, Amaha, I'm not sure, Cherrelle, if you were there, but a lot of the organizers and founders of Gem City Market and your team shared knowledge, shared experience, probably even shared some blueprints or some things, right, to make sure that Hazelwood is successful in the endeavors that they're embarking upon, right? And one of the principles, right, one of the 7 principles of co-ops is cooperation amongst cooperatives, right? That there's, you know, we believe in cooperation and collaboration over competition, right? That we know that a part of the cultural shifting is that there is abundance in the world, right? There is abundance on this earth, right? And it just doesn't seem like it, because capitalism and the ideas around that and the practices around that make us believe that we have to compete for our basic needs, right? Which really is not true. That there actually is enough produced by the earth for all of us. There's clearly enough work and labor to go around, right? But that we have to be able to trust ourselves, right? That we can do it. So I want to thank everybody for coming. I know we could, there's a lot of conversation here. I do want to just big up a resource. So a lot of us are a part of an emerging organization called the National Association of Black Cooperators, NABC, which is really in process. We have a lot of participants already from across the country. Ujamaa Collective is one of the founding members. And so we're building this network, right, that can really support all of the work that we're doing across multiple sectors when it comes to cooperation. One of the partners in that work is the Network for Developing Conscious Communities, NDCC, which is a nonprofit based out of Washington, D.C., spearheaded by a brother named Ron Hance. And they have, right, if you want to learn more specifically about food co-ops, they have a 2-part webinar that is happening starts in September. And I know Sheba shared the link on Facebook already. We will share the link to that webinar if you want to join that webinar and learn some specific things around starting a food co-op. That 2-part series will be very helpful in that, right? So if you're interested, no matter where you're joining us from, if you're interested in learning more about that, there are groups across the country who are sharing that specific education, right, to give folks some steps and some starting points for that work. So we'll share that. I think their first webinar is September 23rd. And I just want to thank our guests. Thank you, Sister Saundra. Thank you, Reverend Love, Cherrelle and Amaha from Dayton. We appreciate you all. The sun is going down on me in my house. As you've seen the light change. But this is beautiful. And we're going to have more collective courage conversations. We're going to have more of these calls coming up. We hope to actually have a conversation at the end of September, one that centers around real estate and land access, right? Because in order to even get the food, we need to go inside the food co-op. We need to free up the land, right? And so I know that we have a lot of land issues here in Pittsburgh, as I'm sure there are land issues across the country. And so we want to hopefully be in conversation with some folks locally here, the Hill District and Homewood and different places, in conversation with some folks from other parts of the country who have done some work to free up some land, right? Who are doing some work around real estate and some collective ownership of real estate, right? And we want to hear some of those stories as well. But yes, thank you all. Any last thoughts? And I also want to say, Saundra and Reverend Love, as you all are getting your work off the ground, is there a way that folks can tap into what you're doing here in Pittsburgh? Because that also is one of the goals of these collective courage conversations, is for folks in Pittsburgh to support the work that's happening locally.
Well, we are in need. We are in need of WBE certified, women-owned business, certified Black-owned businesses. We are right now embarking. You talk about funding, and in the funding criteria, there's requirements that you have WB, certified Black-owned businesses. If there's someone online that is certified and interested in coming and helping us do some community engagement around workshops and training, we are open for that. So they can contact for law. That's one thing that we're in need of.
Okay. Sister Saundra, was there anything else you wanted to add to that?
I wanted to go back and thank Amaha and his crew for everything that they did for us up to this point, because they made it a lot smoother for us. You know what I mean? We didn't have to recreate the wheel. So I want to extend our appreciation to them guys. Good looking out. Appreciate y'all and look forward to continue to work with you guys.
Amen.
Yeah, give thanks. I mean, I think that's that P6 principle that Lakeisha mentioned, cooperatives among cooperatives, because we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Renaissance and Co-op Cincy and other co-ops that kind of showed the way for us. And so like I think this is how this works, you know what I mean? So, we're honored to continue to walk with you. And I think one thing I wanted to say in closing was like I think part of this all the conversations about like how we shift the paradigm, and I think like the paradigm shifts by the dialogue. And so it's like as we have dialogues about like what is this alternative that we can build together, you know what I mean? And knowing that like as we cultivate a space to bring our gifts to the center of the circle, it's bringing the gifts that actually releases the power, you know what I mean? And so it's like that's all within our control. You don't got to ask for permission. It's just like how do we cultivate space to really release our gifts and to co-create our own opportunities by bringing our gifts together,
Ashe. Thank you. Thank you all.
Ashe.
Yes. And thank you, everybody who tuned in on Facebook. Thank you, all of the attendees who joined this Zoom webinar. It was our first one. So, we apologize for any technical difficulties. I know I had posted a link earlier today and it was the wrong link. So a lot of folks were all joining under Sheba's name. And we worked that out, but we're going to get better together over time. And we look forward to being in conversation. Again, you can get your Collective Courage book, which is like the handbook, Bible of the history of Black cooperation in the United States, right? Get this book, join Ujamaa's mailing list. Our website is Ujamaa Collective.org. You can check us out on Facebook. And all of the things. We got a lot of things going on. We operate a retail store, a cooperative retail store, which is open Tuesday through Saturday. So please come and shop with us and support Black makers and artists. And we'll be in conversation again soon. And we just look forward to being together and building the world that we want to live in. So peace.
Thank you for inviting us and keep up the good work.
We appreciate you.
Yes,
Thanks,
good thanks. We're
everyone.
honored to be here for the inaugural one. You know what I mean? Coming straight out of Jamaica. I see you. You doing
I
your
know
thing.
I'm here. I got a little tan. You can't see it. I'm grateful for that rest and jump back into community with you all. Thank you, Sister Sheba, for your support, and Sadiq. I appreciate you all.
Yeah.
And I'll see y'all in some other meetings. And Sister Saundra, I'll be looking for the next email to come to the next meeting. Yep, because Hazelwood's gonna have a cooperative grocery store plus a whole ecosystem of things.
That's right, sis.
Ashe, we're claiming it. We're claiming it.
That's right.
So have a wonderful evening, everybody.
Yes, blessed love, everybody. Peace and hair.
All right. Take care. God bless everybody.
Take care. It's good seeing you, Reverend and Saundra. Yeah.
You too. Amaha.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Peace.
Night.
All right. Good night.
Same to you. Same to you. And